Hello and welcome to the European Parliament. My name is Catherine Fiore and I'm delighted to welcome three of the British MEPs still here in the Parliament. John Tennant from the Brexit Party.
Hello.
Shaffaq Mohammed from the Liberal Democrat Group and Scott Ainslie from the Green Group. We might be joined by a Labour MEP later on, but I'm afraid that is in the lap of the gods. So, we're here, this is your final week in Brussels as an MEP. John, you've been very involved in UKIP for many, many years. You've even been a local councillor. Is the promised land in sight?
Look, I think it's a culmination of many years of making the argument that Britain is better off as an independent, self-governing country. And over the last 3 years since the 2016 referendum, there have been huge efforts from all parties, not just the Liberal Democrats or the Labour Party, but some members of the Conservative Party are trying to overturn a democratic vote. And there's a lot of anger out of that. And so, if we go back to 1 year from where we are now, we were staring down the barrel of another European election and possibly a second referendum. That is now well and truly off the table. So I'm very happy about that. And I'm looking forward to in a way, getting my life back.
So will you be taking your eye off the ball?
No, definitely not. I'll be watching the transition period very closely.
Scott, you're from the Green Party. The Greens have taken a very different position. I imagine you have a less cheery outlook.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel as though we're much better together, stronger together. I think we are shooting ourselves in the foot. I think it's been a narrative that has been spun by the Brexit Party and those on the far right, and they've had all of the airtime. They've had the gutter press backing up their case. They've had a populist rising, and the EU's been used as an easy scapegoat for a failure of government policy. And I'm afraid that people have bought it hook, line and sinker. That said, we do have to heal as a country, and we had a referendum. We have to get together and just try and heal as a country as best we can. I think that the far right would do well to tone down a lot of its rhetoric and its jingoism, and I think that for me, it's been a great, sad loss that we are saying goodbye or adieu at the moment to our European friends, our biggest trading partners. I'm a bit concerned that this has been an argument that's been dominated a bit by asset managers, fund managers, who probably are sheltered from the worst effects of Brexit. But the only hope is that those communities in the Midlands and in the North that have lent the Tories their vote this time round, I just hope that they keep a keen eye on Boris Johnson and his promises, because, as a London councillor, he's not really delivered on those promises previously. He's not got a great track record. We'll see.
Well, this is, Shaffaq, you're obviously a Liberal Democrat again, a Remain supporting party. How do you deal with Brexit now that it's happening, and how do you feel about it personally?
Well, look, for me on a personal level, it's very sad. I'm very sad to leave this place, a place that we as a country have been here for almost 40 years, a place that I see doing some great work, not just in Europe, but across the world. Europe will be a force for good in the world. If we can stick with our European values, we've been able, use trade, so use the soft power to empower women, so insist on equality for women, insist on people minimise their impact on the environment. All of these issues, we will have more of a say if we were here together. But hey, the country's chosen. I still think we are going to be much worse off outside. But look, Boris now wants to get Brexit done. I just fear that he might just do over the North that have lent him his vote. So I'm going back to Sheffield, where I'm still a city councillor. And in our areas, yes, in the north of Sheffield, we now have a Conservative MP. And all these promises of the Brexit dividend and infrastructure, I will be holding her feet to the fire and demanding that Boris delivers. And all the promises about all those queues of countries wanting to do deals with us, this issue of, Brexit, get Brexit done, this is the end of the beginning. There's a lot more. And as you said earlier, we've got 11 months now of whether we get a deal or not. And I think we have to have a deal. A no deal would be a disaster for our country and the most vulnerable. Look, in Sheffield, I work as a youth worker away from politics. So I work with some of the most vulnerable young people in our city, the 16 to 19-year-olds not in employment, education, training. I care about their life chances. That's why I joined the Culture Committee. And Erasmus Plus is a huge project that I'm passionate about, not just university students accessing. I want the sons and daughters of hospital cleaners and car mechanics who are doing vocational training and apprenticeships to benefit from Erasmus. So I'm going to campaign to get this Conservative government to sign up for Erasmus so it does not shut off those opportunities for our young people.
John, Nigel Farage in the past has said that he would like a relationship with other European countries
Absolutely.
that is close. I mean, would you advocate the UK being part of Erasmus in future, for example?
Well,
Where are your red lines?
The thing about this discussion about Erasmus, as one example that you have raised, is that before Erasmus existed, people were studying abroad in various universities through reciprocal agreements. You know, that's something that can still be the case. It does not necessarily have to be Erasmus itself. That's just one example, one small example. But yes, we've said from the outset that Brexit isn't about closing ourselves off. It's about actually being able to trade with the rest of the world. And let's be good friends. Let's be good next door neighbours. But let's not be governed by an unelected bureaucracy in Brussels and Strasbourg. You know, that's the crux of it.
Unelected, we are elected, you are elected.
Yes.
Yeah, but we have very few
we
powers.
take an active role. You know, we are on those committees. We make things happen. You know, me and Scott are going to make something happen on human rights tomorrow, right? So we have actually got involved and done stuff, not just for residents in Europe, but across the world. We've championed things. I've championed human rights.
I mean, when I say unelected, I'm talking about where the way the powers are operated in the European institutions. It comes from the Commission, which is unelected.
No.
It's initiated by the Commission.
No,
Yeah, but
we may have some kind of say on it, but we only have one person to vote for.
Yeah, but no,
One person.
Yeah, but do we have a say on
I mean,
who the ministers are in the UK
that's
government?
not democratic.
Do we elect the transport minister in the UK government? No, Boris Johnson appoints them and sacks them. But we actually were able to turn down 3 commissioners, and one which was from my side, Renew, from France.
But the crucial point is that nobody in the UK can vote for anybody in the European Commission. They can't. And there is actually no recourse if something were to go wrong.
They voted overwhelmingly for us. We, as you've said, have grilled not only the commissioners but the head of the commission. And it's interesting to see.
One person for the vote for. One person. Yes. That's not a ballot.
But it's interesting to see how through the discussions that set the course over the next 5 years, how much we were able to influence that debate.
Very little.
Well, no, you might think that, but actually the Green Deal was part of the Green groups when we had a Green wave. Many people throughout Europe, citizens wanting more rights for the European Parliament, want more of a say for the European Parliament, and that's something that the European Parliament is looking to do as it goes forward with this future on the Conference of Europe. It is looking in on itself, and I don't see Britain doing that as it seeks to compete with Europe and use that people's lives as bargaining chips. I'm a bit worried that we just the standards that we have built and made together as a joint, you know, without borders, over 28 different countries, 23 different languages. It's not been easy, but you know, we've built these social standards, environmental standards, things that have made people much better off. It's been an invisible hand which has been supportive across Europe, and we've allowed this myth of blaming the EU for all our ills. 98% of the laws passed by the EU, the British government has accepted. So what control are we taking back?
You've basically just made the argument there that we don't govern our own country. If you say 98% of the laws implemented by the Commission are taken by the British government,
have been accepted by the British government, have been accepted by the democratically elected government because they make sense.
But
they've been worked together over years.
Also, in the recent general election, the democratic mandate was very clear that they want to see Brexit done.
No, that's fine.
So equally,
Brexit will now
to
be
use your argument,
yes,
I can understand your points that you make, and we can still have reciprocal, friendly relationships with all our European friends, not just those in the EU, but those who are not in the EU as well as building good trading relationships with the rest of the world on our own terms, rather than having being represented by the EU on the World Trade Organization.
Our worry is that we just have a race to the bottom because we have
Well,
a whole
see.
bunch of financial asset strippers.
I mean, I respect your position, but I hope you respect mine as well. But let's see as time goes by.
Let's see what happens. But John, I mean, when there's a lot of issues on the table. We've had the Danish Prime Minister saying, my red line is fishing. I'm not going to budge on that. It's a tiny fraction of the UK economy. You know, when the UK is making these trade-offs, as every country has to do in a trade deal, would that be a red line for you?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, fisheries has been. I mean, I live in a fishing town, and it's been decimated, absolutely decimated by the quota system, and it just becomes so unsustainable to actually do fishing now than it has ever been. So I think it's important that we, as a country, fight for at least some of our fishing waters back, if not all.
Can I ask you, from your perspective of each of your constituents, you've mentioned fishing.
Yeah.
Car manufacturing is another issue in your area.
The steel industry. I mean, Sheffield was one, and the Teesside as well. I mean,
and which sector do you think will be hit in your constituency?
Well, I mean, the financial sector will be hit. I mean, a lot of the campaign to remain was to keep the City of London providing finance for the rest of the world. I mean, part of the work that I wanted to do, had I continued my mandate for 5 years, was to have a grown-up conversation with the city about the despicable levels of inequality that's been allowed. You know, we in London, we are the richest part, one of the richest regions, yet we still have 1 million children going to school with no food in their bellies. That needs to be addressed still. But I think that people will see. My concern for people in London is that our economy is propped up by migration. Our health service, we've got the BMA, we've got nurses feeling unwelcome. They've started leaving the country. The people that help to keep Britain great, that 1 million of those EU citizens living in London have been used as bargaining chips, and they've kept the great in Great Britain. And I just feel as though, I'm deeply concerned about their rights. I'm deeply concerned about the rights of UK citizens that, plan their lives on what was a progressive promise. I just fear that we're taking back steps.
At the end of the day, it's already been made very clear by the government, by Boris Johnson himself, that the rights of EU citizens who are currently living in the United Kingdom will get full fundamental rights. So that's not even being threatened. It's been made clear that they will.
So many of these applications have been turned down. So many ridiculous situations.
Very small number.
So anyway, look, for me, the issue is going to be for the Yorkshire Humber region. We're always a manufacturing region, whether it's Sheffield, Scunthorpe for steel, Bradford, Leeds, etc., but also Hull, with emerging technologies like the Siemens wind farms, etc. So when it comes to manufacturing, proximity matters. That came from a Conservative donor who was a steel magnate in Sheffield, who said, actually, that's why I want to have as close a relationship as possible with Europe, because my steel, 40% of Sheffield's trade, steel goes to Europe. We're only, 20-odd miles between Dover and Calais. He'd love to, ship steel to Australia, but you know what? The Koreans are closer. There's 2,000 German students that study medicine, and a lot of those stay on. I think about 22,000 health professionals are from Europe, and when these young people qualify, they stay in Europe. But if we have issues about recognising qualifications, those students will not come to our regions. Not only will they not come, their money will not come, and it will make our universities not sustainable, and then departments could potentially close. So there's real issues about which priorities we're going to have. We've got 11 months to sort this deal out. And my worry is, by setting that artificial deadline of we will not extend after December, which means then, the clock is ticking. And which sector? Agriculture, fishing, car manufacturing, BMA, medical, manufacturing, steel. Which one is it? What they're going to prioritise? So what is Boris Johnson going to do, and what is the ministers going to do? Because there's 27 countries here lined up with their red lines. 27 against 1 are not good odds.
Scott, how long do you think it will take for the UK to rejoin the EU?
That's an impossible question.
ball.
I mean,
Come on,
another
5
thing
years, 10 years,
well, another
15?
thing we have to look at is a country. We're not a united kingdom anymore. We can't say we're a united kingdom. I think that Scotland have already started making inroads to rejoin. That Northern Ireland will do the same. We can no longer call ourselves a united kingdom. I think I can see the way this is going to play out. And it's predominantly England, how England and Wales cope with over the next few years, I don't know. But I can see a separation from Scotland. I can see a separation from Northern Ireland and perhaps a united Ireland. I really look forward to seeing how this no border in the Irish Sea is going to materialise. I mean, from what I hear, that just seems still beyond everyone's reach. I mean, perhaps as an Irish person, you can explain it to me because I just don't get it. And none of the experts that I've spoken to, they don't get it either.
Agree that the decision to have two borders, one for Southern Ireland, Northern Ireland, one for Northern Ireland, England, is anathema to me. I mean, I'm not very happy with that particular element of it. However, it does remove the backstop. It does, take us out of the customs union. So there's positives and some negatives there. How it plays out, we'll see. Let's just see. But when it comes to the union itself, the United Kingdom Union, yes, you're potentially right that there may be some further arguments further down the line about the union itself. But at this stage, what we need to be looking at, what we need to be really focusing on, is how Boris Johnson plays out the transition period and what trade deal we get at the end of it. And if there's no trade deal, I hope Boris stays true to his word and leaves on the 31st of December 2020.
With no deal, which will be a disaster. 8% increase in food prices.
Well, we'll see.
We don't want to rerun the referendum campaign.
Importance to now.
Look, for me, what will happen? How long before we decide we made the wrong decision? I think that's for the public to decide.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you leave something, then you miss it. When you're here, you take it for granted, and people will miss aspects of the European Union. And at some point in future, it might be a different generation to us that might it might be my children and grandchildren that might say, actually, we're better working with others. And at that point, we may come back. I can't give you a time frame, but I do know that some of the promises that have been made are going to be totally unrealistic. And at some point, public anger will be such that politicians have made promises and let them down. And, that's an easy thing to say sat here at the moment. But you know what? That's what my job's going to be, to keep the European movement that started, the biggest in Europe, is not going anywhere. I'm still going to carry on being pro-European. If you look at my leaflet, and the Yorkshire and Humber residents will know it, there's a picture of me stood outside a building that says the future is Europe. I believed in that in 2016. I believed in that last November, and I believe in it now, and that's why it's gone out to the Yorkshire residents, that I still think the future is Europe.
And I also think it's a real identity crisis that is happening deep within people's. No one really talks about the psychological impact of the separation that happens when families part. And right now, I feel as though a core part of my identity has been stolen away from me against my will and against a vast majority of the people that I know's will. And the psychological trauma that goes on from that, I think eventually will be captured with public anger towards, just turning back the tables on what has been I think we've given too much of a loud foghorn to certain types of people in our country, and I think that those days are hopefully numbered, and we'll race back within a decade.
John, I have to wrap it up here, but are you feeling psychological trauma? And I know that you quite like Brussels.
No.
Do you think you'll be back?
No, I think it's important to remember that the EU as it is now was not what we signed up to back in 1973. It was meant to be a common market. It was meant to be a trading relationship. Now, you cannot say that this is just a trading relationship alone. It's damn sight. It's actually trying to take on the trappings of nationhood. It's got its own flag. It's got its own anthem. It's got its own customs union policy and all sorts. So that is not what people signed up to. So this identity that Scott's talking about actually has been imposed on us rather than actually something that we wanted in the first place.
Well, I'm sure that we will continue to agree to disagree in some aspects, and I'd just like to thank you all very, very much.
No problem.
John, Shaffaq and Scott.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.